Sorry, sweetheart, this table's for family only. My mother smirked as she pointed me to a fold-out chair by the trash can. Everyone laughed. But when the $4,600 bill came and the waiter looked at me, I smiled and said, "Not my table." That night, everything changed forever. The maitre d' smiled as he pulled out the velvet-lined chairs one by one for my family, each seat facing a candlelit table adorned with crystal glasses and gold-trimmed menus. It was the kind of restaurant you only visited once a year, if that. And this year it was for my mom's birthday. Everyone was dressed to impress. My brothers in tailored suits, my sister in her designer dress. I had saved up for weeks to buy a simple black outfit and heels just for this night. I walked in a little late, just 5 minutes, and smiled, scanning for a seat. My mom's eyes met mine. Cold. Calculated. With a smug twist of her lips, she motioned behind her. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, loudly enough for the whole room to hear. "This table's for family only." I blinked. Confused. She pointed to a lonely fold-out chair. One of those cheap, creaky metal things. It sat awkwardly beside a service station, right next to the swinging kitchen door and a trash bin. Laughter bubbled from my siblings. My aunt covered her mouth like she was trying to hide a giggle. My dad didn't even look up. I stood there for a second, heart pounding, face burning, waiting for someone, anyone, to say it was just a joke. That, of course, I had a place at the main table, that I belonged. But no one did. I nodded, bit my lip, walked over, and sat on the cold chair without a word. My view was of a stained wall and a busboy emptying food scraps. Behind me, I heard the clinking of glasses and loud laughter. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay, or if I even wanted a menu. I smiled at the waiter when he passed, ordered sparkling water, and sat there, blinking back tears, pretending the sting in my eyes was just from the smell of bleach and garbage. That night, something shifted in me. I didn't know it yet, but that chair, that exact moment, it wasn't my humiliation. It was the beginning. They say you never forget the way your mother looks at you. And I never have, because my mother didn't look at me with love. She looked at me like I was extra, unnecessary, an inconvenience she had to manage. Growing up, our home was picture perfect on the outside. White picket fence, family portraits on the mantel, birthday parties that looked like they belonged in magazines. But behind those glossy smiles, the truth festered like a wound. My siblings were stars. My older brother, Nathan, was the golden boy, straight A's, football captain, the pride of the family. My younger sister, Ivy, was the little princess, showered in praise, always in new dresses, always getting her way. And me? I was the helper, the one who set the table, cleared the plates, ironed the uniforms, ran the errands. I wasn't asked, I was expected. If I complained, my mom would smile that cruel little smile and say, "Be useful, Ria. You don't have much else going for you, do you?" And if I looked to my dad for help, he'd glance at his newspaper, shift in his chair, and pretend he didn't hear. Silence was a specialty. I remember once I made a handmade birthday card for my mom. I was maybe 7, spent hours coloring it, writing a poem inside, cutting tiny paper hearts to glue around the border. She opened it, looked at it for half a second, and set it aside like it was a receipt. No smile. No thank you. That same night, Ivy gave her a cheap necklace she picked out with Dad's help, and my mom cried like she'd just received a diamond from heaven. I never stopped trying, though. I worked harder in school, hoping someone would notice. I got a part-time job at 16 to buy my own clothes, thinking maybe independence would earn me their respect. But all it did was make me invisible in new ways. "Why aren't you more like Nathan?" she'd ask. "Why can't you be graceful like Ivy?" It wasn't just favoritism. It was a slow, constant chipping away, until I stopped asking for love and started measuring my worth by how much I could endure. So, when she pointed to that chair by the trash can, it didn't shock me. It just confirmed what I had always suspected. I had never really been part of the table. I moved at the moment I turned 18. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tears at the door. Just me, a duffel bag, and a quiet exit no one tried to stop. My mother didn't ask where I was going. My father didn't offer money or even advice. Nathan and Ivy didn't notice. I doubt they even looked up from their phones. I wasn't running away. I was setting myself free, even if it meant walking straight into the unknown. Those first few years were brutal. I worked at a gas station during the day, waited tables at night, and studied in between. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles and coffee. I shared a one-room apartment with peeling paint and no heating. Winters felt like punishment, but I kept going, because what I lacked in support, I made up for in grit. College was a dream I didn't know I could afford, but I applied anyway, took student loans, applied for every scholarship. I'd study late into the night, sleep 3 hours, then head to my shift. I missed out on parties, holidays, and birthdays, but I never let myself fall behind. Every test I passed, every class I aced, felt like a secret victory, like I was building something for myself, quietly, invisibly. And still, through all of it, I kept calling home. On birthdays, I sent cards. On holidays, I mailed gifts, small ones but thoughtful. I called on Mother's Day and left voicemails when no one picked up. I texted updates when I got my associate degree, then my bachelor's. No replies, no congratulations, just silence. But I didn't stop, because somewhere inside me, that little girl still hoped for her mother's approval. Still believed one day they'd look at me and see more than the helper, the errand girl, the ghost in family photos. I didn't need them to applaud my struggle. I just wanted them to see it, to say, "We're proud of you, Ria." But that day never came. So I learned to clap for myself, quietly in my own space. I framed my diploma, stuck it on a wall in my tiny apartment, and whispered, "You did it." Then I went back to work, because while they forgot me, I never forgot them. That's the thing about love. It doesn't always fade just because it's not returned. But it does start to change. I sat there in that wobbly fold-out chair by the trash can, trying to pretend I didn't feel like garbage myself. The restaurant was expensive, crystal glasses, white linen napkins, silverware that didn't match my budget or my outfit. I had chosen a simple dress, not designer but elegant. Still, the moment I walked in, my sister Ivy glanced me over and said, "Did you get that from a thrift store clearance rack?" The others chuckled. Even my mother didn't defend me. She just sipped her wine and said, "Well, at least you made the effort." I bit my tongue. I had brought them small gifts, souvenirs from a business trip I'd taken to Chicago, where I'd closed my first major deal. A little leather wallet for Dad, a perfume for Mom, and custom keychains for Nathan and Ivy. Not expensive, but thoughtful. Personal. When I handed them out, they barely glanced at them. Nathan held his up and said, "Do I look like I need a keychain?" before tossing it back onto the table like it was a used napkin. Ivy didn't even open hers. My father left the wallet in the booth when he went to the restroom. My mother rolled her eyes and muttered, "Trying too hard, as usual." Still, I smiled. I tried joining their conversations. Asked about Ivy's wedding plans, Nathan's new condo, my parents' vacation. They answered, sure, but like they were talking to a stranger, a distant relative they barely remembered. No follow-up questions, no warmth. Then Ivy asked what I was doing these days. I perked up, heart hopeful. "I've been working in real estate," I said. "Actually, I just launched a small property firm." "That's nice," Mom cut in. "But it must be exhausting doing it all on your own. Some people are just built to settle for less." The table laughed. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. Pretending I hadn't built something from absolute nothing. Pretending I wasn't wearing shoes I bought with my own money after pulling 14-hour days to keep my clients happy. Pretending their laughter didn't sound exactly like it had when I was 13 and spilled juice on Ivy's dress. And they all called me clumsy, useless, embarrassing. I just sipped my water and looked down at my napkin, trying to blink away the sting behind my eyes. They didn't see me. Not really. And I was starting to realize they never had. The laughter simmered as dessert was cleared. Empty wine bottles stood like trophies across the table, testaments to their indulgence. The waiter returned with a polished smile and handed over the bill, presented in a sleek black leather folder. My mother didn't even hesitate. "She's paying," she said, her voice light but sharp, her manicured nail pointing directly at me. "Didn't you say you've got money now?" The words felt like a slap, sugar-coated but still bruising. The entire table turned to look at me. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. "I what?" Nathan chuckled, stretching back in his chair. "Come on, Ria. Big shot real estate mogul, right?" I glanced at the bill and my heart jumped. $4,600. They had ordered steaks, seafood towers, endless bottles of wine, custom desserts, the works. I hadn't touched half the items on the table. I had been too busy trying to keep up with the conversation, too busy swallowing pride. I looked at my father. He didn't meet my eyes. He just adjusted his glasses, as if this wasn't his problem. Ivy was texting under the table. My mother sipped what had to be her fourth glass of wine and offered me a smile that wasn't really a smile. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You said you were doing fine." Yes, I had said that because I was doing fine, but not $4,600 on people who don't respect me fine. Still, I felt the familiar tug in my chest, the compulsion to be enough, to prove something, to finally be considered worthy. I'd been chasing that since I was old enough to notice the difference in tone when they talked to me versus my siblings. I took a breath, then another, and then I looked at the waiter and smiled. "That's not my table." The waiter blinked. "Sorry." I leaned forward just slightly, my voice calm, almost gentle. "This isn't my table," I repeated. "I'm not with them." The table fell silent. My mother's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I wasn't invited," I said, pushing my chair back. I wasn't welcomed. I was humiliated, insulted, ignored. "So, no, I won't pay for this dinner, because it's not mine. None of this is mine." I stood, smoothing down my dress. Nathan scoffed. "Wow, dramatic much?" I didn't even look at him. The waiter looked from me to the others, unsure. "They'll split it," I said softly. "I'm sure they can afford it. After all, they're family." Then I turned and walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor, my heart racing. Not with shame this time, but with something I hadn't felt around them in a long time. Freedom. For once, I hadn't begged to be accepted. I hadn't played the part. I had simply walked away, and that somehow felt richer than any bank account balance I'd ever earned. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence settle like a storm cloud over the linen-draped table. Their faces were frozen, forks mid-air, mouths slightly open. The tension was thick enough to cut with the steak knives they had so lavishly used. "I'm not family," I said, my voice steady, even soft. "Remember? That's not my table." No one moved. I gave the waiter a polite nod and turned away. My heels clicked with certainty this time. I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard a shuffle. My mother hissed something under her breath. My sister gasped. My brother cursed. But I was already walking out, past the chandeliers, past the wine display, past the reflection of the girl who'd always been left out. Not anymore. As I reached the hostess stand, the waiter jogged up beside me, a separate bill in hand. I smiled and took it. "Thank you for separating it ahead of time," I said, pulling my card from a sleek clutch. I knew how tonight would go. He nodded almost too kindly. "You don't deserve that." I shrugged. They've been rehearsing that act for years. I tipped generously, enough to make his eyes widen. "Split the rest evenly," I said, motioning to the chaos I'd left behind. "They're family, after all." As I stepped outside, the crisp air hit my skin. It felt like the first deep breath after years underwater. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. Inside, I could imagine the scramble, the confused calls for the waiter, the arguments, the way my mother would twist it all later to make herself the victim. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Not my seat. Not my laughter. Not my debt. Not my table. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and for the first time in years, felt entirely in control of the story they once wrote me out of. And, I wasn't done yet. Exactly 1 week later, my phone rang. I stared at the screen. Arjun. My brother. I let it ring. Then again, this time it was Mom. Then my sister. Then Dad, who hadn't called me in over a year, and even then it was just to ask if I could pick up dry cleaning while I was in the area. I didn't answer. Not a single one. I was in the middle of something far more important. The glass conference room was buzzing with quiet energy. My legal team sat across from a room full of suited executives, pens in hand. The final draft of the acquisition was in front of me. I flipped through the pages, calm and focused, my signature moments away from closing a deal worth 7 figures. My small but mighty startup one I'd built from scratch between night shifts and student loan payments, was being acquired by a national brand. My platform had taken off. Investors saw the potential. But more than that, I saw myself. Fully. Finally, my phone buzzed again. This time a message popped up. They'd charged our cards, but it wasn't enough. Restaurant filed a report. So we dined and dashed. Can you call me back? Arjun. I didn't. They thought I'd pick up because I always had. Because I always bailed them out, cleaned up their messes, quietly swallowed the shame they fed me at every gathering. But that Ria? She no longer existed. The truth is, I had anticipated this. When I walked out of that dinner, I left them not just with the bill, but with the weight of their own entitlement. They thought they were punishing me with that fold-out chair. They didn't realize they were handing me the microphone. Another message came in. Mom says you owe us an apology. You embarrassed us in public. What kind of daughter does that? I nearly laughed. Apology? What kind of mother mocks her child and sits her next to garbage? What kind of family laughs at one of their own just because she wore a dress from clearance and not couture? My pen hit the final page. I signed. I smiled. My life, my real one, had just begun. Later that night, I opened my email. Dozens of missed calls. More messages. One even read. We were going to invite you to Mom's anniversary dinner. But maybe next time don't be so sensitive. Sensitive. That's what they always called me when I cried after being excluded. When I left the room to gather myself. When I dared to say that hurt. But I wasn't sensitive anymore. I was successful. And they were just loud. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the skyline, and I raised my glass to the silence around me. It was the first time it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. They needed me now, but I was finally too busy needing me. The wind on the rooftop was just perfect, not too cold, just crisp enough to remind me autumn had arrived. Golden string lights danced overhead, and jazz hummed from a live trio in the corner. The skyline stretched behind us, bold and breathtaking. But the best part wasn't the view. It was the table. A long, elegant table covered in white linen, fresh flowers and gold-trimmed plates. 20 seats, every one of them filled with someone who had seen me, valued me, chosen me. No one here smirked when I spoke. No one laughed at my outfit or asked why I thought I deserved a seat. Because here I belonged. Across from me sat my co-founder, Ava. She raised her glass with a grin. To the woman who closed a deal and a door in the same week. Laughter rippled around the table. My mentor, Mr. Kaplan, nudged my elbow. You've always had it in you, kid. Just needed to stop waiting for permission. I nodded, quietly soaking it all in. The warmth, the peace, the absence of judgment. This dinner wasn't loud or overdone. It didn't need to be. It was mine. Every guest was someone who'd walked beside me through the climb. My investor, my roommate turned sister, the barista who offered me free coffee during my broke coding days, and whom I later hired to manage our new office. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. I'd spent years begging for scraps at a table where I was never wanted, where I was placed beside trash, literally and emotionally. Now, I'd built my own table, and there was no fold-out chair in sight. Halfway through dinner, Ava leaned in. Did your family ever call again? I smiled. They did. Wanted to talk things out. Said they were hurt by how I acted. What did you say? I didn't, I replied, lifting my glass. Because you don't owe explanations to people who only love you when you're silent. Everyone nodded. They got it. Because they knew what it meant to rise above without ever stepping down to explain your worth. As dessert arrived, small slices of cardamom cake and handmade truffles. I stood up and tapped my glass. Thank you, I said, voice soft but steady, for seeing me before the world did, for clapping when I won, and for sitting at this table, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. A chorus of cheers followed, glasses raised high. I looked out at the city lights, then back at my people. My real family. That night, I didn't just host a dinner. I reclaimed every version of myself that ever felt small. I rewrote the rules. I sat at the head of a table that didn't just hold food, but history, healing, and a whole new beginning. And in that moment, with the stars above and laughter around me, I knew one thing for sure. I was never the problem. I just outgrew their table. The moment I saw her name on that guest list, my fingers went numb. Ivy Thompson, written so neatly, so casually, like it didn't represent the worst heartbreak of my life. I stared at it for what felt like forever, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. It felt like someone had slapped me across the face with the past. I marched straight into the kitchen, where my mom was stirring something in a pot, humming like everything was normal. "Mom," I said, my voice already cracking, "why is Ivy on the guest list?" She didn't even look up. "Because she's your sister, Lana. She has every right to be there." I blinked, my stomach flipping. She destroyed my first marriage. You remember that, right? Now she looked at me, finally, but her eyes held that familiar tired look, the one that always showed up any time I reminded her that I wasn't okay pretending everything was fine. "You need to let that go," she said with a sigh. "You can't carry bitterness forever. Don't create drama again. It's your wedding, Lana. Don't make it about old wounds." Old wounds? My whole life had been stitched together with silence and forced forgiveness. And now they wanted me to smile down the aisle with the woman who took my husband sitting 10 rows back? I couldn't breathe, but I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded and walked out of that kitchen like a ghost. That was the moment I realized this wedding wasn't about me. Not really. It was about keeping up appearances. It was about pretending we were one big, happy family. That my pain didn't matter. That Ivy hadn't torn my world apart. As I sat in my car, staring at the guest list still clutched in my hand, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. If they were going to pretend, then fine. I'd pretend too. Smile for the photos. Toast with fake joy. But deep down, something was shifting inside me. And they had no idea what was coming next. They always said, "That's just Ivy being Ivy." As if that excused everything. The flirty smiles. The overly long hugs. The way she'd laugh at Daniel's jokes like he was the only man in the room. At first, I laughed it off too, because what else do you do when your own sister is circling your husband like a vulture in lipstick? It started slow. Little things during family dinners. Ivy sitting just a bit too close to him on the couch. Playfully stealing food off his plate. Everyone acted like it was harmless. "She's just naturally flirty," Mom would say. "Don't be insecure, Lana." But I wasn't being insecure. I was being gaslit. The first red flag was a text I saw by accident. Daniel left his phone on the table while he was in the shower. The screen lit up with a message that read, "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it." No name, just a devil emoji. My stomach dropped. I wanted to throw the phone, but instead I scrolled. And what I saw changed everything. Dozens of texts, late-night meetups, private jokes, even photos. Ivy's photos. I confronted Daniel. He denied it. Said it was a joke. "We're just close, Lana. Don't be paranoid." But then he stopped coming home on time. He stopped coming home altogether. One night he just didn't show up. I waited. Called. Cried. Nothing. A week passed. Then 2. And then, through a friend, I found out he was living with her. My sister. They didn't even hide it. The betrayal was public, loud, and brutal. I was the girl who got replaced by her own blood. And my family? They said it was complicated. That Ivy didn't mean to fall in love. That I needed to move on. No one stood up for me. Not once. It wasn't just my marriage that was stolen. It was my dignity. My trust. My place in the family. They watched me break and still brought her to Sunday dinner like nothing happened. So no, seeing her name on that guest list wasn't a small thing. It was the reopening of a wound I had no choice but to stitch up alone. The hardest part wasn't losing Daniel. It wasn't even losing Ivy. It was the silence that came after, the kind that wraps around your throat like a scarf soaked in ice water. At first, I thought anyone would check on me. Maybe my mom would come over with soup and a hug. Maybe my dad would take me out for coffee like he used to when I had a bad week. Maybe my aunts, the ones who posted Bible verses and family first quotes, would say that was wrong of Ivy. But they didn't. Instead, they called it just a phase. Said things like, "You'll understand when you're older," as if betrayal had an age limit. One and actually patted my shoulder and said, "Sweetheart, men don't leave good women. You must have done something." I remember that moment so clearly. Her perfume was too strong, and her hand felt like sandpaper. I stood there nodding like a polite robot while my world rotted from the inside. Ivy didn't just steal Daniel. She flaunted him. Instagram photos with captions like "Something's fall into place for a reason" and "My forever ring." I'd scroll through her feed like a masochist, every image feeling like a slap in the face. They even posted their new apartment tour together, using the couch I had picked out for my living room. I tried therapy. Weekly sessions where I'd cry until my voice cracked, asking why the people who were supposed to protect me became bystanders. I cut contact, blocked numbers, deleted birthdays from my calendar. But silence became its own kind of punishment. The loneliness felt like a vacuum, loud in its emptiness, echoing with things I wished they'd said but never did. The worst part? My family kept acting like I was the one creating drama. "We don't take sides," they'd say, as if neutrality in betrayal wasn't just another betrayal. I wasn't asking for a war. I was asking to not be left bleeding alone. So yes, I rebuilt. I survived, but I did it in isolation. No bridal shower texts. No updates from cousins. Just a hollow space where my family used to be. And maybe, just maybe, that's what finally made me realize I was never really part of them. I was just convenient. Until I wasn't. After everything I went through, I never thought I'd trust anyone again, let alone fall in love. I had built walls so high, even I forgot what it felt like to let someone in. But then, Noah happened. We met on a random Tuesday of all days. I was at the library trying to escape my apartment and the endless scroll of perfectly filtered lives online. He was in the self-help aisle, holding a copy of Boundaries for the Broken. I remember smiling to myself and saying, "Solid choice." He looked up, smiled back, and said, "You think so?" I'm new at this whole healing thing. That one sentence opened a door I didn't even know I still had. Noah wasn't flashy or loud. He wasn't trying to fix me. He just saw me, the broken parts, the quiet strength, the layers I didn't show to anyone else. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink myself to be loved. He didn't ask invasive questions. He never brought up my past unless I did. Instead, he listened. He'd bring me coffee with the exact amount of oat milk I liked. He'd hold my hand when I tensed up walking past familiar places. And when I had my first anxiety attack in front of him, he didn't panic. He just sat beside me and said, "I'm here. Take your time." Over time, I started to laugh again, like really laugh. The kind of laughter that starts in your belly and takes over your whole body. It felt foreign at first, but eventually I leaned into it. Into him. After a year of dating, he took me to the same library where we first met. In the exact aisle, he held out a book he had custom-made with the title, "Lana's Next Chapter." Inside was a hollow cutout and in it a ring. I said yes before he even finished asking. But this time, I swore things would be different. This wedding would be mine. No family pressure. No fake smiles. No masks to keep peace at my expense. I wasn't that girl anymore. I had clawed my way out of grief, out of shame, out of silence, and I wasn't about to let anyone drag me back in. With Noah, I felt safe. With this new life, I felt hope. And for the first time in years, I was planning a celebration. Not to impress, not to prove, but to honor love. Real love. But little did I know, the same people who watched me drown before were about to wade back in. The one condition I had, the only thing I asked for, was that Ivy wouldn't be invited. I made it clear from the beginning. She is not welcome. I had told my mom, my dad, even written it in bold across the family group chat when we started planning. I didn't care about the flowers or the venue or who sat where. I just wanted peace on my wedding day. I wanted freedom from the shadows of my past. But peace apparently was too much to ask. I got the guest list back from my mother a month before the big day. It was printed neatly, folded in half like a menu. I skimmed through the names quickly until I saw it, there, wedged between my cousins and childhood friends. Ivy Monroe. My hands turned cold. I stared at the name like it had jumped out and slapped me. I looked up at my mom and asked, trying to keep my voice steady, "Is this a mistake?" She didn't even flinch. "Oh, Ivy RSVP'd last week. She's really looking forward to it." The air left my lungs. I told you she wasn't invited. Mom's eyes narrowed with that all-too-familiar look of parental dismissal. Lana, don't start. She's your sister. Family doesn't get excluded from weddings. Family. I nearly choked on the word. She slept with my husband. She destroyed my first marriage. She made a mistake. We've all made mistakes. Are you really going to hold on to this forever? And then my brother chimed in from the couch like it was just some casual debate. You'll look bitter if you exclude her, Lana. Everyone's moved on. Maybe it's time you did too. Bitter. That word echoed like a slap in a quiet room. I would look bitter? Not Ivy, who flaunted her affair across social media like a badge of honor. Not Daniel, who ghosted me and slid right into a relationship with my own sister. I would look bitter for wanting a single day free from trauma? My chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. The worst part wasn't even that Ivy was coming. It was the realization that my family hadn't changed. After everything I'd endured, public humiliation, emotional collapse, 2 years of therapy, nights spent crying until I couldn't speak. They still didn't see me. My feelings were once again the price for their comfort. I was supposed to smile, pose for pictures, say my vows while she watched from the second row? No, absolutely not. Something inside me shifted that day. A quiet, sharp click, like a lock turning. I realized this wedding, my wedding, was no longer about love. It had become a stage for family delusion. But I wouldn't be their puppet again. They thought they could betray me and still show up in white and champagne. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't storm out or make a scene. Instead, I smiled. At the dress fitting, I let them zip me in like I was the happiest woman alive. When my mother gushed about the table settings, I nodded and agreed. When Ivy sent a smug little text, "Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle, sis," I didn't reply. I was calm, unshakably calm. But inside, I was watching it all burn. Every moment felt like a slow-motion lie. The dress I once loved now felt like a costume. The venue I adored became a stage I never wanted to step onto. I had tried, God knows I had tried, to rebuild a life after what Ivy and Daniel did to me. And for a while I thought I had. Noah was real. That much I was sure of. He was gentle, patient, the kind of man who held my hand through my hardest days without asking for anything in return. I didn't doubt him. I doubted everything else, the people surrounding us, the ones who claimed to love me while stomping over my boundaries like they were tissue paper. So I did what no one expected. I stayed quiet and watched. I watched my family prepare a celebration they thought they could control. I watched them dismiss my pain, yet again, under the banner of family unity. But what they didn't know was that while they were choosing flowers, I was choosing freedom. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the sun. Noah was still asleep, peaceful in our apartment. I got out of bed, quietly, heart pounding but steady, and sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a sheet of paper. Dear Noah. It started like that. I told him everything, not because I didn't love him, but because I did. He deserved truth, not a ceremony drenched in pretense. I told him about Ivy's invitation, my family's betrayal, and how I couldn't, in good conscience, walk into a marriage surrounded by people who refused to respect the pain I had endured. I sealed the letter with tears in my eyes. Then I drove to the venue. It was breathtaking. White chairs lined the lawn. Flowers draped over the arch where I was supposed to promise forever. I stood there alone, letting the silence sink into my bones. The wind picked up my veil, the one I wouldn't be wearing. Then I pulled out my phone. I dialed the planner first. Then the caterer, the photographer. One by one, I canceled everything. No explanations, just 3 words, the wedding's off. And then I walked away, not just from the venue, from all of it. The lies, the masks, the weight of being the good daughter. They wanted a show. I gave them silence. But the storm hadn't passed. It was just beginning. The moment I pressed send on the message to cancel the wedding, I felt an unexpected sense of relief wash over me. The chaos had already started in my mind. It was no longer about what anyone else wanted. It was about what I needed, and what I needed was to finally stand up for myself. But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Within minutes, the notifications started flooding in. My phone buzzed uncontrollably as the family group chat lit up like a Christmas tree. At first, I stared at the screen, unsure how to react to what was unfolding. Mom, what do you mean it's OFF? You've ruined everything. I've worked so hard for this. Dad, what the hell, Lana? This is ridiculous. What happened? Ivy, I'm so confused. Why does she hate me so much? I never did anything to her. It's heartbreaking. Each message felt like a slap in the face. They didn't understand. They never did. Instead of asking why, they assumed I was the problem. But I wasn't going to let that break me again. I took a breath, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed my response. I kept it simple. Calm. I didn't need to defend myself. I needed to let them know the truth. I posted the message online, tagging my mom and Ivy in it. I didn't care if they saw it or not. It was for me. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. I chose peace instead of pretending. I hit send. The world felt lighter for a second. Then the world exploded. I watched, stunned, as my phone pinged over and over. Notifications from people I didn't even know, friends, strangers, acquaintances, pouring in with supportive messages. Some even knew the whole story, having followed the years of tension between me and Ivy. They had witnessed everything that had unfolded, and they weren't afraid to speak up now. Good for you, Lana. You deserve better than this. No one should have to choose between family and happiness. It's your day. Ivy always seemed like a snake. You made the right call. The comments kept pouring in, and for the first time in years, I felt validated. Strangers, people I barely knew, had more compassion and understanding for me than my own blood. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I didn't need to apologize. For once, I was choosing myself over the suffocating expectations of others. Meanwhile, my phone continued to buzz with angry messages from my family. My mother was relentless. You're selfish, Lana. You don't know how much effort we put into this. You think you're going to find someone better than Noah? You've ruined everything. My dad wasn't much better. This is childish, Lana. You can't just call everything off because you're upset. Life doesn't work like that. But Ivy's messages took the cake. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. We're family. I've apologized 1,000,000 times. Why can't you forgive me? You're hurting me. I almost laughed. She really had no idea, did she? Or maybe she did and was just playing the victim like she always did. I could almost hear her dramatic tone as I read those words. She had always been so good at making everyone think she was the innocent one, the sweet girl who didn't mean to hurt anyone. But I knew the truth. I scrolled through more messages, trying to tune out my mother's angry texts and Ivy's pathetic attempts to garner sympathy. The deeper I went into the sea of notifications, the clearer it became. I wasn't alone anymore. I clicked on a message from an old college friend. It said, Lana, I've been following your story for years. You've always been stronger than you give yourself credit for. Don't let them break you again. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I wasn't the crazy sister or the bitter ex-wife. I wasn't the one causing problems in the family. I was just someone who had been pushed too far, and now I was choosing peace. And the world was finally validating that. By the time I closed my phone, the family chat had turned into a complete war zone. I couldn't help but feel a small, bitter smile tug at my lips. They wanted me to stay quiet, to swallow my hurt, to play along with their twisted version of family. But that wasn't me anymore. I was done pretending. It was over. The hours after I canceled the wedding felt surreal. My phone had gone quiet, but my mind was anything but. The quiet buzz of the world outside contrasted sharply with the whirlwind inside me. I had made my decision, but there was still one thing left: Noah. I walked back to my apartment, my footsteps slow and heavy. The sun had already set, casting long shadows across the empty streets. I could feel the weight of the past few years bearing down on me, but I wasn't crushed. I was lighter, freer. Still, I needed to know that Noah understood. He had to. I sat on the couch, my fingers hovering over the screen as I read his message one more time. His words were simple, but they hit me like a wave. Lana, I can't imagine what you must have been going through all these years. I've never wanted to put you in a position where you have to choose between me and your family. But I want you to know that I'm here no matter what. I don't need a big wedding. I just need you. You've been strong enough for both of us, but now it's my turn to carry you. I love you, and I will always support you. If you want to still be with me, let's go anywhere, just the two of us. No drama. No more fighting. I read the words again, my heart swelling in my chest. His message was everything I needed to hear. It was a declaration of trust, of love that wasn't weighed down by guilt or expectation. It was everything I had been searching for, and it was here right in front of me. I typed back a simple reply. Yes, just us. Let's do this. Let's be free. The weight in my chest lifted for the first time in years. I knew then that I had made the right decision. That night, we didn't need to make big plans. We didn't need an elaborate ceremony or a room full of people pretending to be happy for us. All we needed was each other. So we packed a bag, called a small chapel by the beach, and just like that, everything changed. The following afternoon, in the quiet of a small chapel with the waves crashing in the background, Noah and I said our vows. It was just the two of us, no cameras, no family, no pressure. Just pure, raw love, the way it should have always been. I remember looking into his eyes as we said, I do. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was fighting for approval. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. This was our life, our love, and we were free. Afterwards, we spent a few days at a remote beach, sipping wine and watching the sun dip below the horizon. There were no texts from my family, no calls, just the sound of the ocean and the soft laughter we shared. It was simple, but it was perfect. Back home, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I'd blocked everyone, every single person in that family group chat, every person who had stood by while Ivy destroyed my life, while my mother pretended nothing was wrong. They would never get it. They would never understand the peace I'd found without them. And that was okay. I was finally at peace. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their drama. What mattered now was what I had with Noah. That was enough. As I sat on the beach, a glass of red wine in my hand, I looked at Noah beside me. We didn't have the big wedding everyone had expected, but we had each other, and that was everything. I smiled softly, feeling the warm breeze against my skin. I had walked away from everything that had hurt me, and now I was walking into a life of my own making. A life I didn't have to fight for. A life filled with love, trust, and the kind of peace I'd never known before. For the first time, I could finally breathe.